Have you ever wondered what it would be like to take a stroll, but instead of in the park, it's around the Earth at about 17,500 miles per hour? Welcome to the world of spacewalks, where stepping out gets a whole new meaning. Since 2021, astronauts have clocked over 1,548 hours floating around in space, fixing things, conducting experiments, and probably not looking down much. But what would happen if an astronaut takes a wrong turn in this vast, star-studded neighborhood? Stick with us as we explore the hair-raising yet fascinating possibility of an astronaut getting lost in space. Spoiler alert, it's not like forgetting where you parked your car at the mall. Think of spacewalks as an astronaut's extreme home improvement project, except it's in space. Since 2021, there have been over 245 of these space missions, adding up to more than 1,548 hours. But what if things don't go as planned? Space is less forgiving than your toughest teacher. A small slip-up and you're not just falling off a ladder, you're potentially floating into the abyss. It's a chilling thought. However, don't start picturing astronauts as lost balloons in the vast sky just yet. Let's find out how they've managed to avoid this frightening possibility. Coming up, we'll take a look at how astronauts train hard to make sure they don't end up lost in space. You'll be amazed by what they go through. But before that, if you're as excited as we are, make sure to hit the subscribe button for more exciting content. Imagine being plucked from your day job as a test pilot and dropped into the jungles of the Philippines with no supplies. Sounds like a reality TV show, right? But no. That was NASA's training back in the day. These guys had to survive in the wild before they could even think about space. Now, things are more modern. Astronauts don't go to jungles anymore. Instead, they train with really cool and high-tech machines. But why do they train so hard? It's to keep them from accidentally taking a one-way trip into the galaxy. These spacewalkers are like the Olympians of the cosmos. They train intensely, and only the best of the best get to step outside the International Space Station. It's not just about being smart. They have to stay as cool as cucumbers in the most stressful situations imaginable. Have you ever seen astronauts training underwater? That's not them just taking a swim for fun. They're simulating space conditions in a giant pool in Houston, complete with a fake International Space Station. This underwater world gives them the feeling of weightlessness, a sneak peek into their future spacewalks. It's also a place where astronauts get to float, twirl, and probably resist the urge to pretend they're mermaids and mermen. But the astronauts are not just relying on training. Their lives depend on some pretty advanced equipment too. NASA's toolbox for astronauts is like something out of a sci-fi movie, ensuring they stay safe and connected during spacewalks. Safety tethers and anchors are astronauts' lifelines, literally. These are super strong, heat-resistant webbing that can hold up to 881 pounds. So, what would happen if the tethers break and the jetpack fails? You're left floating in space with a limited oxygen supply, a bit of water in your helmet, and the Earth's breathtaking views. There's no quick rescue option. The space shuttle, which could have been a savior, is no longer in service. Let's zoom in on an astronaut's most impressive tool, the SAFER system. This nifty gadget might sound like it's straight out of a sci-fi flick. SAFER, standing for Simplified Aid for EVA Rescue, is essentially a mini jetpack. If astronauts start drifting away, they can use SAFER to navigate back to safety. Now, we know our astronauts are super prepared, but what if one of them did drift away into space? Don't go anywhere, because up next, we're exploring that mind-bending possibility. Let's say you're an astronaut, lost in space with your trusty spacesuit. These suits are like mini spaceships, but even they have their limits. The oxygen tanks in these suits last between 6.5 and 8.5 hours. Once that oxygen runs out, you're facing hypoxia, a fancy word for not enough oxygen. Now, if you find yourself in space without a suit, things get a bit more intense. Within about 15 seconds, you'd lose consciousness due to the lack of oxygen. It's a slow 15 seconds, giving you just enough time to ponder the mysteries of life. Your body would react in bizarre ways to the vacuum of space. Those science classes weren't kidding about the boiling points of liquids. In space, your body fluids would start to boil because of the low pressure. And that's not even the scariest part. You'd want to exhale the air in your lungs because if you don't, the expanding air could rupture your lungs. That's not a pleasant thought. Space is a place with really hot or really cold temperatures. For example, on the moon, it can get super hot, up to 248 degrees Fahrenheit, or extremely cold, dropping down to minus 274 degrees Fahrenheit. So, either way, it's far from comfortable. Have you ever thought about what happens to someone who dies in space? You'll be astonished with the details. Let's explore this space mystery. In space, when someone dies, the usual process of decay we see on Earth doesn't happen. Why? Well, space doesn't have gravity like Earth does, so blood doesn't pool in the body. Also, without oxygen, bacteria can't break down the body like they usually do. So, what does happen? The body might freeze solid or dry out, kinda like jerky. And no, despite what some movies show, the body wouldn't explode. The human body is tough enough to handle the pressure change, but there's still a lot we don't know because scientists haven't really been able to study this. But what's next on our cosmic journey? What happens to a body that gets lost in space? Does it float away to the stars or does it stick around our neighborhood? Let's find out. Picture this. You're an astronaut and oops, you're now floating in space near the ISS. What happens next? Chances are you'd keep orbiting Earth just like a satellite. Think of it as a very long, very silent spacewalk. But here's a twist. If someone deliberately sent a body into space, it could be called space littering. Yep, even in space, you can't just throw stuff out the window thanks to a United Nations rule. So, what if your space journey takes you beyond Earth's orbit? Here's where it could get interesting. Your final space destination is like throwing a dart blindfolded. You could end up anywhere. Maybe you'll drift out of the solar system, or maybe you'll crash a party on another planet. Scientists aren't totally sure since it's never happened. Let's dive into a question that might sound like a sci-fi movie plot. Has anyone ever actually gotten lost in space? The short answer? No, and here's why. Back in 1984, astronaut Bruce McCandless became the first person to fly untethered in space. He drifted 320 feet away from the Challenger space shuttle, all while controlling his movement with a jetpack. This was no small feat. Imagine floating in the vastness of space with only a backpack to guide you. But don't worry, he made it back safely and even snapped that famous photo we all love. While no one has been lost in space, you might be wondering, how do astronauts handle surprises up there in space? Well, they're not alone. For every astronaut on the International Space Station, or ISS, there are thousands of brilliant minds back on Earth, ready to jump in and help. The Mission Control Center is like a guardian angel for astronauts. They can call Earth anytime for assistance. Their rigorous training, top-notch equipment, and support team back on Earth make sure astronauts can handle almost anything space throws at them, except maybe an alien asking for directions to the nearest gas station. And that's our journey into what happens if an astronaut gets lost in space. But let's leave you with this thought. What if, despite all the training and technology, an astronaut did drift away into the unknown? How could we rescue them, or what new discoveries might they make as they float in the vastness of space? Share your thoughts below. Until next time.